Welcome back to the FIBO Data Model training. This is ERWin. Today we scope our first data model from FIB-DM. And the example use case is the United States Bank Call Report. We will be using concept maps. Yeah, if you remember the class Semantics for Project Architects, solution architecture is middle out. Now, instead of the enterprise approach, top-down rationalizing the whole model, we focus on FIB-DM packages, the FIBO modules for the project, not the whole thing. No? So we may be looking at loans and mortgages or at securities or other packages in FIB-DM. And our implementation is iterative. Not a big bang, not a waterfall. We start with small manageable projects. Now here, for example, we may scope for core banking entities, in other words, agent and roles. And then we address a package like mortgages, and the next iteration may have cards. So departments and projects leverage and derive. So our goal is implementation for a department, a project, or for an application. And we use data models, we use UML, we may implement in Java code, we may create an RDBMS. And our method is to derive. We derive from the industry standard. That's the normative FIBO production and its enterprise data model. And we also consult other models. Now we may have a customized FIBO model. We would have in-house models. And we also consult third-party vendor models and other standards. Yeah, to derive a project model means scoping. Now, FIB-DM can be intimidating, like a monster with more than 3,000 entities. And to be clear, we don't need a giant model for our project or even a department within the bank or financial institution. And we certainly won't create 3,000 tables on our RDBMS, and most of them will never be populated with data. So we cut. We extract a subset model from FIB-DM that comprises only the required entities. In PowerDesigner, we create a new package for our project and add required, in other words, scoped entities to it and its diagram. And in ERWin, we do the same. We create a new subject area, and to that subject area, we add the entities that we need for our project. And then, independent of the data modeling tool, we generate a new project logical data model. And notice here we make a step. FIB-DM is a CDM, conceptual data model, but then as we create a new smaller FIB-DM model, we can do it as an LDM right away. And then subsequent iterations, like in the previous page, scope additional content. And then we merge it from FIB-DM into the project logical data model. So within the FIB-DM training course, we are here now scoping our first data model, which is an advanced class for data architects. And semantics for project architects is a prerequisite. And in particular, semantics for finance users, because that lesson explains the 15 FIBO fundamental concepts in detail. And then we should have the class before this one, Semantics for Data Architect, which is teaching the structure of FIB-DM. Yeah, and the FIB-DM concepts article is a good reference that you should study after completing this class. Yeah, audience and content. This lesson is primarily for project data architects, modelers, experience in enterprise reference models, and you may have used FIBO design patterns and definitions. Now, finance users and subject matter experts define the scope. Now, project managers want to understand the process. So you should pay attention at the first half of this class, but you don't necessarily need to attend the details of the data architect's work in the data modeling tool. And ontologists follow the same approach when scoping an operational ontology from the FIBO. Ontology and data model are in sync, and the project scope is the same. Yeah, this class is a hands-on exercise. You can follow the steps in PowerDesigner or your data modeling tool. The example we will be looking at is the FDIC bank call report reference data. We use 8 of the FIB fundamental supertypes to create the concept maps. We transpose the concept map to a data model subject area or package. We review the conceptual data model and compare it to the ontology graph. Yeah, so the US bank call report, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, is a regulator for US banks. And the key report that all banks in the US must file is a quarterly consolidated report of condition and income, usually called the call report. And the FDIC publishes the XBRL taxonomy and bank filings. And you can view and download the call report of your bank. Yeah, and one of the schedules in the call report is the entity schedule, which is reference data about the submitting depository institution. Now, for this exercise, our data requirements, we just take the reported data items. No, so we think of if we had to cut a FIB-DM subset model that should hold an RDBMS with the data to provide the call report data. Yeah, and here we see now we have a date, we have value, definition, and so on. And here in the example we have JPMC, and North America submission has a date, ID, data item, value, definition, call schedule, and line numbers. Yeah, so from these call report data item requirements, we can draw a simple concept map. And this is a generic concept map. Now, you probably have done some of these. Simply circles for the concepts and arrows for their relations. And here the FDIC certificate required data item 621 identifies in this example JPM Chase, and the certificate is registered in the FDIC institution directory. the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation registered the certificate. And also note that JPMC is a legal entity, and that there is a distinction between the legal entity, JPMJ's National Association, and what the legal entity does, which is a role as a domestic US bank. The legal entity has a registered address in the United States, and JPMC NA has a legal entity identifier in LEI. And the corporation has 176 billion in issued capital. Yeah, and you should all remember the 15 fundamental concepts from our Semantics for Finance users class. Now, in the second step, we take our impromptu concept map and we conceptualize our sample data items. That means to assign fundamental business concepts and their specializations. Yeah, and the 15 concepts are all ultimate supertypes in the financial industry business data model. Now they are the entities with the most subsets. And they all, as you recall, have an icon, name, and abbreviation. And in the FIBO ontology, the fundamental 15 concepts are direct subclasses of the thing. Yeah, we use the abbreviation and the icons as mnemonics to teach the concepts to modelers and business users. Yeah, identifying entities and concepts. We can do that in the data modeling tool or in MS Excel. What we do is we research concept entities. So in this example, we look at the FDIC certificate number, an item that is in the FIBO data model, and we look up what are their associations, and this gives us the concept in the concept map, and the associative entity gives us this standardized label for the arrows. Yeah, let's create the concept map diagram, and we see FIB-DM has a legal entity identifier, an exact match for the LEI, and if we look up its supertype, we see that it's a designation. And that gives us the symbol that we want for our concept map. Now, likewise, of course, FIB-DM has a country, and that rolls up to the concept of location. The FDIC certificate number is another direct match, no? Rolling up to the designation. And the FDIC institution directory, if we look up its ultimate supertype, it's a collection. The LEI identifies a legal person. No, and the example was JPMC&A, and that's a stock corporation, another entity in FIB-DM. And the stock corporation is a subtype of the concept of agent. Now, and the concept also includes person, legal person, and organization. So the FDIC, a role, insures and regulates institutions that take deposit. So depository institution is an entity in the data model, rolling up to the fundamental concept of roles. And also the FDIC itself, you find that it's a registration authority that issues the certificate. The FDIC also is an identity as an agent, but we don't need that detail for our scope. Well, the capital is a subtype of a monetary amount, and the entity holds numbers and descriptive properties as currency and date. And again, if we traverse up the supertype hierarchy, we find that the balance, the monetary amount, is a scalar quantity value. Finally, the address field in our schedule is a registered address, a subtype of reference. So then in the next step, we simply replace the circles with the conformed icons of the concept. Yeah, and then in the next step, we standardize the concept map relations. So here the data modeler suggests FIB-DM associative entities that match related concepts and requirements. Now we looked at this already, no? So if we look at the FDIC certificate number, we find associations like registers, identifies. If we look at the stock corporation, we find that a legal entity identifier identifies it, that it has issued capital, and that it has a legal address. And so we take these conformed associative entity name, and we add these names into our standardized concept maps. Yeah, and here's our finished FIB-DM concept maps. And we see that all the sample values, we replace them with the entity names, and we replaced any labels on the arrows with standardized relations between concepts, in other words, with standardized associative entity names. And that methodology keeps the concept map within the vocabulary and structure of the underlying data model. And you can then expand, of course, this small example, no? So the monetary amount has more defining concepts. JPMC, no? Or the stock corporation, the bank would have many more roles. And also we can add other regulators to our legal and compliance concept maps or data model. Yeah, from concept map to data model scope, we have 4 steps. First, we populate a new diagram, in other words, a PowerDesigner package or ERWin subject area with the identified entities. Then we add supertypes all the way up to the fundamental concept entity. We add associative entities, and then when we are done, we generate a new LDM export or FIB-DM subject area model. Yeah, step 1, so we create a new diagram with the 9 entities. So we open FIB-DM in the data modeling tool, and here the screenshots are PowerDesigner, but you can easily replicate, follow along in ERWin or other tools. So we create a PowerDesigner package, ERWin subject area, and just populate it with these 9 entities. And then in practice, as a data modeler, you may draw the concept map and conceptual data model in parallel. Now, however, I highly recommend that you use the concept map to validate your design with the business. simply because the concept map is easier to understand than the complex entity relationship diagram. Yeah, step 2, adding the supertypes all the way up to the concept, the ultimate supertype. So let's start here with the depository institution. So in the data modeling tool, we simply navigate the inheritance or the supertype in ERWin. We find that the depository institution is a financial institution. Then we move on there and we continue the exercise, no? Adding financial institution to our scope, and then we follow this all the way up, no? Via financial service provider, agent, and role. Yeah, next we do the same for the registration authority. No, it's our entity for the FDIC and other registrars. It's also a service provider, subtype of agent role, and the fundamental concept of the role. The stock corporation is a legal entity, and it's a subtype of legal person, party, and the agent. The country and the registry are a geopolitical entity, a subtype of geographic region, ultimately the fundamental concept of region. The balance for the capital is a monetary amount, subtype of the scalar quantity. The registry is a structured collection, subtype of OMG Commons collection. The conventional street address is a physical address which is an index, subtype of the concept of reference. The FDIC certificate and the LEI are registered identifiers, a subtype of contextual identifier, which is an identifier and rolls up to the fundamental concept of designation. Yeah, and here at the end of step 2, we see all our 9 entities and their supertypes all the way up to the fundamental concepts. So in step 3, we add associative entities to our diagram. And this connects the base entities for the business context. Now, finding and matching associations is a challenge, not even for experienced FIBO experts. So we ask, how does the issued capital relate to the stock corporation? Well, we can research in the entities relationships in the data modeling tool. So here for the stock corporation, we see associations like has date of incorporation and has date of registration, and finally has issued capital. Yeah, so let's connect the stock corporation to its capital balance. And here my recommendation is always use the concept hierarchy at the leaf level, at the lowest level. So in other words, the green entities of the concept maps, not associations between the supertypes where possible. So we've used the data modeling tool to find the relations, and we investigated the stock corporation, and we found has issued capital. And we see here that connects stock corporation monetary amount, and with it its subtype, the balance. No, so that's a perfect match. Yeah, associating the FDIC certificate number, another easy match. No, we find the associative entity registered, and that has relations to the FDIC certificate number and the registration authority. And also we find that the FDIC certificate is registered in a registry. Here's a preview of the next class, the FIBO FIB-DM Navigator. It can be quite tedious and time-consuming to traverse model hierarchy, model relationships in the data modeling tool to find the correct FIB-DM associations. So instead, the navigator is an accelerator, an MS Excel workbook populated with FIB-DM metadata. And here, for example, we want to know from the stock corporation to its capital balance. So entity 1, we filter it with the stock corporation, and we see the stock corporation has an associative entity related to it, has issued capital, and has issued capital via its subtype, the balance. And it is a monetary amount, and also it then associates to has issued capital. So likewise, we can look all the way from the registration authority to the FDIC certificate number to the registry. So we filter by registration authority. We see the registration authority is related to the associative entity registers. And among many other things, like here routing numbers, issuer IDs, listed securities, a registration authority also registers FDIC certificate numbers, what we have scoped for our call report. And then the FDIC certificate number is registered in a registry. So we can see that this is much easier and faster to research than traversing within the data modeling tool. Yeah, so stock corporation to address. Now we see the stock corporation has no direct associative entity relating to an address. However, its supertype, the legal entity, has a legal address, and that connects to a conventional street address, which is an address in FIB-DM. So, and the address has a country. The conventional street address is a physical address which has a country. Now, identifies association completes the model, and that is a catch-it-all. As you can imagine, there are many identifiers and many things that have IDs in finance. So as we scope the associative entity identifies, if we complete relationship links in PowerDesigner or ERWin, we see it creates a lot of the needed relations that we need for our scope. So it rolls up here the legal entity identifier, identifies a financial service provider, And our FDIC certificate number is a subtype of financial service provider identifier, and that also identifies the financial service provider. Yeah, and here's our complete CDM scope for the bank core report entity schedule. Here on the left, we see our depository institution, and the depository institution is identified by a legal person, and also we can see it is a service provider, and the registration authority is also a service provider, and it manages the FDIC registry, and it registers the FDIC certificate number, and in turn the legal entity, the legal person, is registered with the FDIC certificate number. And here is the legal person connects to our depository institution. So the legal entity is a corporation, subtype stock corporation. Stock corporation has issued capital, which is the capital balance, a monetary amount, scalar quantity. And also the legal entity has a street address, which is a physical address, and has some country. Yeah, this question always comes up. Do I really need all these entities? And the short answer is no, you don't. Now, for a project model, it's perfectly fine to scope only the directly required green entities. And in practice, after you cut your model, in the logical data modeling phase, you add attributes to it from your source system feeds. And then as a logical data modeler, you examine the full set of required data items, and you map them to the entity attributes. And here's a simple rule. If after this mapping attribution, you have an entity that doesn't have attributes, you can remove them from the hierarchy and remove them from your project model. Now, so remember, FIB-DM is a reference model. Now, for the data modeler, it provides a rich library of building blocks to accelerate the design process, but it doesn't stipulate how you design your LDM, and much less how you denormalize in the PDM. Yeah, and here is a sample logical data model not derived from this CDM scope, and it shows out of the box attribute derived from FIBO data properties. And as a data modeler, you add more attributes from your source systems and data requirements. And then if we remove entities that didn't receive attributes in this exercise, we are left off with the core design, the depository institution, likely financial institution, because there are other subtypes that we may need, and we have the registration authority, we have the FDIC certificate number, and the associative entity, we have the balance amount, the legal entity, and we have the address with the country. Yeah, some further denormalization and simplification steps. As a modeler, you shall review the associative entities. Now, and those that are not many to many, you're okay to replace them with direct relationships. So if the physical address has only one country, we can replace the associative entity with a direct relationship. Likewise, here supertype subtype relations, like physical and conventional address, can be configured to roll up or roll down during physical model generation. Same applies to the legal entity hierarchy. And it's a logical physical model decision whether certain scalar quantities and dates should be transformed into plain attributes or columns in the physical model. Here's a little excursus. The approach with the FIB-DM concepts and the standardized associations, it's also fully applicable for ontologists. Think of when you have to scope an operational ontology, maybe also for FDIC regulatory requirements. Now, the 15 fundamental business concepts apply to both the FIBO and its data model. And remember, in the data model, they are ultimate supertypes. In the ontology, they are the highest level classes, subclass only of the thing. So we use the same methodology to create the concept map. And then, likewise, with the concept map, we can easily scope a subset of the FIBO to hold the regulatory reference data. And the call report presentation and semantic compliance article on the bank ontology website show the instance graph below. Now here we have our stock corporation. We see it's the monetary amount. Its object property has issued capital that rolls up to the balance. And also we see stock corporation is a corporation which is a legal entity, which has a street address, which is a physical address, and the address has a country. So we recognize it's exactly the same design pattern as in the concept map and the data model. Resources for further study. You find more than 50 diagrams on the FIB-DM website, and also in your full model delivery folder. And open source users can review this PowerPoint in MS Office Online and download a PDF. And the PDF and MS Office Online have all the links shown in this video. And full model licenses find the original PowerPoint file in the delivery folder. You should study the articles for a deeper understanding of FIBO FIB-DM fundamental concepts. So you can read through this article, and it's also a concise reference list. Well, and finally, when scoping, avoid islands and watch the next lesson, the navigator, in the YouTube course. Well, thank you for watching this class.